The Shadow of Blackthorn Grange, a chilling mystery unraveled. Part 1. Blackthorn Grange stood like a forgotten sentinel on the cliffs of Cornwall, its weathered stone walls battered by the ceaseless wind off the Celtic Sea. The estate, perched above the village of Penwith Cove, was a relic of a bygone era, its towers and gables shrouded in mist more often than not. For decades it had been little more than a ghost story to the fishermen below, its windows dark, its gates locked. But in the autumn of 1927, the Grange stirred back to life, and with it came a mystery that would unravel the lives of those who crossed its threshold. The man tasked with untangling this knot was Lawrence Vale, a private inquiry agent from London, whose reputation for discretion and sharpness had earned him cases the police preferred to avoid. Vale was no romantic. He was lean, 40ish, with a face that suggested too many late nights and too few illusions. His grey eyes missed nothing, and his dry wit was as much a weapon as his logic. He arrived in Penwith Cove on a damp October evening, summoned by a cryptic letter from one Miss Clara Winthrop, the new mistress of Blackthorn Grange. The letter had been brief but urgent. "Mr. Vale, I require your services at once. A matter of grave importance threatens my household. Discretion is paramount. Come to Blackthorn Grange by the week's end." It was signed with a flourish, and the paper bore the faint scent of lavender. Vale, never one to trust flourishes or lavender, packed his bag and caught the next train west. Penwith Cove was a cluster of whitewashed cottages huddled against the cliffs, their chimneys puffing smoke into the grey sky. The villagers eyed Vale with the suspicion reserved for outsiders, but a few coins at the local pub, the Rusty Anchor, loosened tongues. Blackthorn Grange, they said, had been empty since old Sir Reginald Winthrop, Clara's father, died 20 years prior. Clara, barely a child then, had been sent to live with relatives in London. Now, at 30, she'd returned to claim her inheritance, bringing with her a small entourage. The villagers whispered of strange lights in the Grange's windows and voices carried on the wind. Vale listened, sipped his ale, and filed it all away. The road to the Grange was a winding scar up the cliff, slick with mud and sea spray. Vale's taxi struggled, and he arrived at the iron gates just as dusk bled into night. The house loomed, its silhouette jagged against the sky. A butler, gaunt and pale as a spectre, greeted him. "Mr. Vale? Miss Winthrop awaits you in the drawing-room." The interior of Blackthorn Grange was a study in faded opulence. The air smelled of wax polish and damp stone. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen tears, and portraits of stern Winthrops glared from the walls. Clara Winthrop stood by a roaring fire, her auburn hair catching the light. She was striking, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held a flicker of unease. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Vale," she said, her voice low and cultured. "I fear I've inherited more than just a house." She introduced the others in the room, a small cast of players in what Vale sensed was a carefully staged drama. First was Dr. Ernest Quayle, a portly man in his 50s, with a florid face and a nervous habit of adjusting his spectacles. He was Clara's physician, and, she explained, an old family friend who'd come to ensure her health in the damp climate. Next was Lydia Crane, Clara's cousin, a pale woman of 25 with a pinched mouth and eyes that darted like a cornered animal's. She wore a drab dress, and her fingers twisted a handkerchief as she murmured a greeting. Finally, there was Victor Marwood, a solicitor from Truro, mid-30s, with slick dark hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He'd been hired to settle the estate's legal affairs but seemed, to Vale, far too comfortable in the role of confidant. Clara wasted no time. 3 nights ago, I found this in my bedroom. She handed Vale a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was jagged, as if scratched in haste. Leave Blackthorn Grange, or the truth will bury you. No signature, no clue to its author. Vale turned the paper over, noting the quality of the stationery. Expensive, likely from the house itself. Have you shown this to anyone else? He asked. Only Dr. Quayle, Clara replied. I thought it a prank at first, but then other things happened. Such as? She hesitated, glancing at the others. Objects moved in the night. A locket of my mother's, which I keep locked in a drawer, was found on my pillow. And last night, I heard footsteps in the corridor outside my room, but no one was there. Vale's eyes flicked to the group. Quayle cleared his throat, muttering something about nerves and sea air. Lydia stared at the floor. Marwood's smile tightened. Any enemies, Miss Winthrop? Vale asked. None that I know of, she said. But my father's death left complications. Debts, disputes over the estate. I thought coming here would settle things, not stir them up. Vale pocketed the note. I'll need to see the house, your room especially. And I'll speak with each of you alone tomorrow. For now, assume nothing is trivial. If you hear footsteps, see lights, or find more notes, tell me. Dinner was served in a cavernous dining room, the table set with silver and porcelain that gleamed under candlelight. The conversation was stilted, each guest measuring their words. Vale observed. Quayle drank too much wine, Lydia barely touched her food, and Marwood watched Clara with an intensity that bordered on proprietary. The butler, whose name was Harrow, moved like a shadow, his face unreadable. After dinner, Vale retired to his room, a small chamber in the east wing. He sat at a desk, lit a cigarette, and began to map the players in his mind. Clara Winthrop was the linchpin, but her fear seemed genuine, too genuine for a woman orchestrating her own mystery. Quayle's nervousness suggested guilt, but of what? Lydia's silence was a shield, and Vale suspected she knew more than she let on. Marwood was the wild card, his charm a mask for something sharper. And Harrow, the butler, was too invisible for Vale's liking. Servants, in his experience, saw everything. The house itself was a puzzle. Its corridors twisted, its staircases led to dead ends. Vale explored after midnight, his footsteps muffled on threadbare carpets. In Clara's room, he found the drawer where the locket was kept. The lock was intact, no signs of tampering. The window was bolted, the cliffs outside a sheer drop to the sea. Whoever moved the locket had access and nerve. Back in his room, Vale reviewed the note again. The phrase, "The truth will bury you," stuck with him. It wasn't a threat of violence, it was personal, pointed. Someone in this house was hiding something, and Vale's job was to find it before the curtain fell. The next morning, he began his interviews. Quayle was first, in the library, surrounded by leather-bound books and the faint smell of mildew. The doctor fidgeted, his spectacles glinting. I've known Clara since she was a girl, he said. Her father was a good man, but his death, it broke her. This house isn't healthy for her. Broken how? Vale asked. Quayle hesitated. She was young, impressionable. There were rumors after Sir Reginald died, debts, a scandal. Nothing proven, but Clara carried the weight of it. And the note? Childish nonsense. Quayle scoffed. Probably Lydia, jealous of Clara's inheritance. Vale let that sit. Jealousy was a motive, but the note felt colder, more calculated. He moved on to Lydia, who met him in the conservatory, its glass walls streaked with rain. She was brittle, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know anything about the note, she said. I just want to leave this place. Why stay, then? Vale pressed. Her eyes flickered. Clara asked me to? She's family. And I have nowhere else to go. Vale noted the tremor in her hands. Lydia was scared, but not of ghosts. Marwood was next, in the billiard room, leaning on a cue like a man posing for a portrait. Miss Winthrop's under strain, he said smoothly. The estate's a mess, creditors circling, locals spreading rumors. That note's likely some villager's idea of a joke. You've checked the estate's books? Vale asked. Marwood nodded. Sir Reginald left debts, but nothing catastrophic. Clara's got enough to keep the Grange if she's careful. Vale didn't buy the solicitor's nonchalance. Marwood was too invested, too quick to deflect. Finally, Vale spoke to Harrow, who stood ramrod straight in the pantry. I've served the Winthrops 30 years, the butler said. I see to the house, nothing more. See anything odd lately? Vale asked. Harrow's eyes were flat. The house is old, sir. It creaks. People imagine things. By noon, Vale had a clearer picture but no answers. The note, the locket, the footsteps, they'd pointed to someone inside the Grange, someone with access and a grudge. He spent the afternoon combing the house, finding nothing but dust and locked doors. That night, as rain lashed the windows, Clara summoned him to the drawing room. Her face was pale. It happened again, she said, handing him another note. This one read, The past is watching. Leave, or it finds you. Same handwriting, same paper. Vale's jaw tightened. The game was escalating, and he was one step behind. Part 2. The Whisper of the Past. Lawrence Vale stood by the drawing-room's fireplace, the second note in his hand, its jagged script taunting him. The rain battered Blackthorn Grange, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the tension in the room. Clara Winthrop sat rigid, her hands clasped, while Dr. Quayle hovered nearby, muttering about sedatives. Lydia Crane lingered by the door, her eyes fixed on the floor, and Victor Marwood leaned against the mantel, his casual pose betrayed by the tightness in his jaw. Harrow, the butler, had vanished to fetch tea, though Vale suspected he was listening from the shadows. "Who found this one?" Vale asked, his voice cutting through the silence. "I did," Clara said. "It was tucked into the frame of my mirror, just after dinner. I checked the room before retiring, nothing was there." Vale turned the note over, noting the same heavy stationery as the first. The phrase "the past is watching" gnawed at him, It wasn't just a threat, it was a riddle, pointing to something buried in the Grange's history, or Clara's. "Anyone else in your room tonight?" he asked. "No one," Clara said. The door was locked. "Locks can be picked," Vale said, his eyes sweeping the group. Quayle coughed, Lydia flinched, and Marwood's smile flickered. "I'll need alibis for after dinner. Everyone, write down where you were and who you were with. No exceptions." The group dispersed, their reluctance palpable. Vale stayed by the fire, turning the note over in his mind. 2 notes, 2 nights. The Lockett incident. Footsteps. Whoever was behind this wasn't just playing games. They were building pressure, testing Clara's nerve. But why? Money? Revenge? Or something older, tied to the Grange itself? Vale's first move was to revisit Clara's room. The mirror, an ornate relic with a chipped gilt frame, stood opposite the bed. The note had been slipped behind the glass, a place easily missed unless you knew to look. The room was on the 2nd floor, its window still bolted, the cliffs below a death sentence. No outsider could have climbed up, not in this storm. That left the household, or a secret Vale hadn't yet uncovered. He examined the mirror closely. A faint scratch on the frame caught his eye, barely visible unless you tilted it to the light. It wasn't random, it formed a tiny, deliberate X. Vale filed that away, along with the fact that the mirror was bolted to the wall, immovable. Someone had chosen this spot with care. Downstairs, the alibis waited on the dining room table, scrawled in varying hands. Quayle claimed he'd been in the library, reading medical journals. Lydia said she was in her room, sewing. Marwood wrote he'd taken a walk in the garden, despite the rain. Harrow stated he was in the kitchen, preparing the next day's menu. Clara, of course, had been in the drawing room, alone. No one corroborated anyone else, which Vale found convenient. Liars, in his experience, preferred solitude. He started with Quayle, cornering him in the library. The doctor's hands shook as he poured brandy. "This is absurd, Vale," he blustered. "I'm here to help Clara, not frighten her." "You mentioned her father's death yesterday," Vale said. "Rumors. Scandals? Care to elaborate?" Quayle's face reddened. "It was nothing. Sir Reginald was a gentleman, but he overextended himself. Investments went sour. There was talk he'd cheated a partner, a man named Carver. Nothing came of it." "Carver's still alive?" Vale asked. "Died years ago," Quayle said quickly. "Heart attack, I believe." Vale let the silence stretch. Quayle's story was too pat, too rehearsed. "You ever handle Sir Reginald's affairs? Financially, I mean." "I'm a doctor, not a banker," Quayle snapped, but his eyes slid away. Next was Lydia, in the conservatory again, her fingers shredding a lace handkerchief. "I don't know anything," she said before Vale could speak. "I just want to be left alone." "You're Clara's cousin," Vale said. "You grew up together?" "Until she was sent to London," Lydia said. "I stayed with my mother in Devon. We weren't close." "But you're here now," Vale pressed. "Why?" Lydia's lips trembled. "Clara wrote to me, said she needed family. I thought, maybe she'd share the estate." It's not fair, you know. She got everything, and I got nothing. Vale leaned back, studying her. Lydia's bitterness was raw, but her fears seemed deeper, rooted in something she wasn't saying. You ever hear of a man named Carver? He asked. Her eyes widened, just for a moment. No, she said too quickly. Who's that? Vale didn't push. She was lying, but pressing her now would only make her clam up. He moved on to Marwood, finding him in the billiard room, chalking a cue with deliberate care. Your alibi's weak, Vale said without preamble. A walk in a storm. Nobody saw you? Marwood's smile was a blade. I like the rain, Mr. Vale. Clears the head. You've been through the estate's books, Vale said. Anything in there worth threatening Clara over? Marwood set the cue down. The Grange is a money pit. Debts from Sir Reginald's days, mostly settled now. Clara's got enough to live comfortably, but there's no fortune here. If someone's after her, it's not for gold. What about this Carver fellow? Vale asked, watching closely. Marwood's expression didn't flicker. Never heard of him. Old creditor, I assume? Vale let it go. Marwood was smooth, too smooth, and that made him dangerous. Finally, Vale tracked down Harrow in the pantry, where the butler was polishing silver with mechanical precision. You've been here 30 years, Vale said. You knew Sir Reginald. What was he like? Harrow's hands didn't pause. A proud man, sir. Generous, but unwise with money. His death was a blow to the house. And this Carver? Vale asked. The butler's eyes flicked up, then back to the silver. A name from long ago, sir. A business associate. I know little of it. Vale left the pantry with more questions than answers. Carver's name had rattled 3 of them, Quayle, Lydia, and Harrow, but Marwood's ignorance felt too perfect. The man was either clueless or a better liar than the rest. Vale spent the afternoon digging deeper into the house itself, searching for clues the notes might point to. The library yielded nothing but dusty ledgers, most from Sir Reginald's time, filled with cryptic entries about investments and repayments. One name appeared twice, J. Carver. No details, just sums of money, large ones marked as disputed. By evening, Vale's suspicions were coalescing. The notes weren't random. They were tied to Sir Reginald's past, possibly this Carver. Someone in the house knew the truth and was using it to drive Clara out. But who? And why now? Dinner was a tense affair, the clink of cutlery loud against the silence. Clara barely spoke, her eyes darting to the shadows. Quayle drank heavily, Lydia pushed food around her plate, and Marwood watched everyone with that same proprietary air. Harrow served with his usual invisibility, but Vale caught him lingering by the door, his gaze fixed on Clara for a moment too long. After dessert, Vale asked Clara to walk with him in the hall. You ever hear your father mention a man named Carver? He asked. Her brow furrowed. Vaguely. When I was a child, I overheard him arguing with someone. I think the name came up. Why? Could be nothing, Vale said, though he didn't believe it. What about your mother's locket? Anything special about it? Clara's hand went to her throat, as if the locket were still there. It was a gift from my father. She wore it always. After she died, I kept it to remember her. Any inscriptions? Hidden compartments? She shook her head. Just a plain silver heart. Why do you ask? Vale didn't answer. The locket's role in this puzzled him. Moving it from a locked drawer to Clara's pillow was no small feat. It required access, skill, and intent. He needed to see it again. In Clara's room, she retrieved the locket from the drawer. It was as she described, simple, silver, with a faint tarnish. Vale opened it, finding a faded photograph of a woman. Clara's mother, he assumed. Nothing else. He handed it back, but as Clara took it, her fingers brushed the edge, and a tiny click sounded. A hidden panel sprang open, revealing a folded scrap of paper. Clara gasped. I never knew. Vale unfolded the paper. It was a receipt, dated 1907, for £10,000, signed by Sir Reginald Winthrop and countersigned by J. Carver. The word debt was scrawled across the bottom. This changes things, Vale said. Someone knows about this and wants it to stay buried. Clara's face paled. But who? And why scare me instead of just asking for it? That's what I'm here to find out, Vale said. He pocketed the receipt, his mind racing. The locket wasn't just a sentimental trinket, it was a key, and someone had gone to great lengths to point Clara to it. Or to warn her away. That night Vale sat in his room, the receipt and notes spread before him. The handwriting didn't match any of the alibis, but he hadn't expected it to. The culprit was clever, likely disguising their script. He lit a cigarette, letting the smoke curl as he thought. The past was the thread, Sir Reginald Carver the debt. But how did it connect to the present? Quayle's nerves, Lydia's fear, Marwood's charm, Harrow's silence, they all hid pieces of the puzzle. At midnight a scream shattered the quiet. Vale was out his door in seconds, following the sound to the west wing. He found Lydia in the corridor, her nightgown clutched around her, pointing at a wall. It moved, she stammered. The panel, it slid open, and I saw someone. Vale examined the wall. A section of wood, disguised as part of the paneling, had indeed shifted, revealing a narrow passage. He lit a match and peered inside. The passage was damp, its walls slick with moss, leading into darkness. Footprints, fresh in the dust, trailed away. Stay here, Vale told Lydia, though she looked ready to bolt. He followed the passage, his revolver in hand, though he doubted he'd need it. The tunnel twisted, descending into the bowels of the Grange, before ending at a rusted iron door. It was locked, but scratches around the keyhole suggested recent use. Vale returned to Lydia, who was shivering. Who did you see? He asked. I don't know, she said. It was dark. A shadow, tall, moving fast. Vale escorted her to her room, then woke the household. Clara, Quayle, Marwood, and Harrow gathered in the drawing-room, their faces a mix of confusion and dread. Vale didn't mention the passage yet. He wanted to see who flinched. Someone was in the walls tonight, he said. Care to confess? Quayle sputtered, Marwood raised an eyebrow, and Harrow's face remained a mask. Clara clutched her robe, her eyes searching Vale's. Lydia, beside her, was silent, but her hands trembled. "Tomorrow," Vale said, "we search this house top to bottom. No one leaves until I know who's playing ghost." As the group dispersed, Vale caught Marwood lingering, his eyes on the receipt Vale had left on the table. The solicitor's smile was gone, replaced by something colder. Vale filed that away, too. Back in his room, he locked the door and sat by the window, the sea roaring below. The passage, the locket, the notes, they were pieces of a machine, built to push Clara towards something or away from it. Carver's name was the hinge, but the motive was still out of reach. Money? Revenge? Or a truth so dangerous it had to stay buried? Vale stubbed out his cigarette. Tomorrow, he'd tear the Grange apart, starting with that passage. Someone in this house was running out of time, and he intended to find out who. Part 3. The Hidden Veins of Blackthorn Grange. Dawn broke over Blackthorn Grange, grey and sullen, the sea mist curling around the cliffs like a living thing. Lawrence Vale stood in the west wing corridor, staring at the secret panel Lydia had stumbled upon. The house was awake now, its occupants gathered in the dining room under Harrow's watchful eye, forbidden to leave until Vale gave the word. He'd slept little, his mind turning over the locket's receipt, the notes, and the passage that snaked through the Grange's walls. The mystery was tightening, and Vale felt the weight of it like a noose. He started with the passage. Armed with a lantern and his revolver, he eased the panel open and stepped inside. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of earth and decay. The footprints he'd seen last night were still there, faint but clear, leading toward the rusted door he'd found. Vale followed, his lantern casting jagged shadows. The passage was narrow, its walls studded with ancient timbers, some carved with initials or dates, relics of the Grange's long history. One carving caught his eye, J.C. 1905. J. Carver, perhaps? Vale traced it with a finger, committing it to memory. The iron door at the passage's end was still locked, its keyholes scratched but unyielding. Vale tested the hinges, solid, no give. Whatever lay beyond was meant to stay hidden. He backtracked, searching for other exits. A side tunnel, barely a crawl space, branched off, leading upward. Vale squeezed through, emerging behind a bookcase in the library. The bookcase swung silently on hidden hinges, its edges worn from use. Someone had been moving through the Grange unseen, and not just last night. Vale returned to the dining room, where the household waited, their faces a gallery of unease. Clara sat at the head of the table, her hands folded but her eyes sharp. Quayle mopped his brow, Lydia stared at her lap, and Marwood tapped a cigarette against its case, unlit. Harrow stood by the door, his posture rigid. Vale held up the lantern, letting the silence build. "There's a passage in the west wing," he said. "Someone used it last night. Footprints don't lie. Anyone care to explain?" Quayle sputtered. "This is preposterous. Old houses have quirks, servants' tunnels, nothing more." "Servants don't leave threats," Vale said, pulling the second note from his pocket. "Or move lockets. Or know about debts from 20 years ago." He let his gaze linger on each face. Lydia's hands twitched. Marwood's tapping stopped. Clara spoke, her voice steady. "What debt, Mr. Vale?" He produced the receipt from the locket, laying it on the table. This £10,000 owed by your father to a man named Carver. Signed in 1907. Someone in this house knows why it matters. The room went still. Quayle's face drained of color. Lydia's breath hitched. Marwood leaned forward, his eyes on the receipt. Harrow didn't move, but Vale caught the faintest tightening of his jaw. Carver's dead, Quayle said, his voice hoarse. This is ancient history. Then why is someone digging it up? Vale asked. I want this house searched. Every room, every drawer. Clara, you're with me. The rest of you stay here. Harrow, keep them put. The butler nodded, his eyes unreadable. Clara rose, and Vale led her to the library, where he showed her the hidden bookcase. Her face paled. I had no idea, she said. This house, it's like a maze. Someone knows it better than you, Vale said. We start here. Look for anything tied to Carver or your father. They combed the library, pulling books from shelves, checking drawers. Most were empty or held mundane papers, bills, letters, estate records. But in a locked desk drawer, which Vale pried open with a letter opener, they found a leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed, the ink faded but legible. It was Sir Reginald's, dated 1906 to 1907. Clara read over Vale's shoulder as he flipped through. The entries were terse, detailing business ventures, mines, shipping, land deals. Carver's name appeared often, described as a partner, but with growing bitterness. One entry, dated March 1907, stood out. Carver demands his share. Threatens exposure. I cannot pay, not now. The Grange must be protected. Another, a month later, Carver is a vulture. If he speaks, we are ruined. I have a plan. Clara's voice trembled. What did he mean, ruined? Vale didn't answer. The journal ended abruptly, a week before the receipt's date. Whatever Sir Reginald's plan was, it hadn't made it to the page. Vale tucked the journal under his arm. We keep this quiet for now. Let's check the other rooms. They moved to Quayle's quarters next. The doctor's room was cluttered, medical books, vials, a half-empty bottle of brandy. Under the bed, Vale found a locked tin box. He jimmied it open, revealing a stack of letters tied with twine. They were from Sir Reginald to Quayle, dated 1907. Most were pleas for advice, mentioning debts and disgrace. One letter, dated a day before the receipt, was chilling. Ernest, if Carver speaks, my name is Ash. You know what must be done. Clara's hand went to her mouth. Dr. Quayle, he was involved? Maybe, Vale said. Or he's just a loose end someone's trying to tie up. Lydia's room was next. It was Spartan, almost monastic, with a single suitcase and a sewing kit. In the suitcase, Vale found a photograph. Clara as a child, standing with a man who wasn't Sir Reginald. The man's face was scratched out, but on the back, in childish scrawl, was written, Uncle J. Vale showed it to Clara. That's me, she said, frowning. But I don't remember this man. Uncle J. I had no uncles. Vale pocketed the photo. Carver again? Or someone else? Marwood's room was last, its orderliness a contrast to Quayle's chaos. The solicitor's suitcase held legal papers, all routine, but a folded map of the Grange's grounds caught Vale's eye. It was hand-drawn, with a red X marked near the cliffs. No explanation, just the X. Back in the dining room, Vale laid out the finds, the journal, Quayle's letters, Lydia's photo, Marwood's map. The group stared, their masks slipping. Quayle's hands shook. Lydia's eyes darted to the photo. Marwood's jaw tightened, and Harrow's gaze lingered on the journal. "Talk," Vale said. "Someone knows what this adds up to." Quayle broke first. "I didn't do anything," he blurted. "Reginald was desperate. Carver was blackmailing him, said he'd ruin the family name. I told Reginald to pay, but he wouldn't listen." "What was Carver's leverage?" Vale asked. Quayle swallowed. "I don't know. Reginald never said. Just that it would destroy Clara's future." Vale turned to Lydia. "This photo. Who's Uncle Jay?" Her voice was a whisper. "I don't know. I found it in my mother's things years ago. I kept it because it was Clara." Vale's eyes moved to Marwood. "And your map? Planning a treasure hunt?" Marwood's smile was thin. "I was curious about the estate's boundaries. Old houses have secrets." Vale let the silence stretch. Harrow said nothing, but his stillness was louder than words. Vale was about to press further when a crash echoed from upstairs. He bolted, Clara behind him, the others trailing. The sound came from Clara's room. The mirror was shattered, glass strewn across the floor. On the wall behind it, scratched into the plaster, was a single word: Carver. Clara clutched Vale's arm. "What does this mean?" "It means someone's desperate," Vale said. He scanned the group, now crowded in the doorway. Quayle was sweating, Lydia trembling, Marwood pale. Harrow's face was blank, but his hands were clenched. Vale sent them back downstairs, then examined the room. The mirror's frame was splintered, but the X he'd seen before was still there, now joined by fresh scratches. Whoever broke the mirror knew its secret, or wanted to destroy it. He checked the passage again, finding new footprints, larger than before, leading to the iron door. Still locked. That night Vale sat in the drawing room, the journal and letters spread before him. Clara joined him, her face drawn. "My father, was he a criminal?" she asked. "Not likely," Vale said. "Desperate, maybe." Carver had something on him, something worth killing to keep quiet. "Killing?" Clara's voice cracked. Vale didn't soften it. "Men like Carver don't just die of heart attacks when money's on the table. Your father's plan might have been permanent." Clara looked away, the firelight flickering in her eyes. Vale leaned back, piecing it together. The notes, the locket, the passage, the mirror, all pointed to Carver's death, and someone in this house was either avenging it or hiding it. Quayle was weak, Lydia scared, Marwood calculating, Harrow invisible. But the footprints, the broken mirror, they suggested strength, nerve. Vale's money was on Marwood, but Harrow's silence nagged at him. As the clock struck midnight, a low groan echoed through the house, not human, but structural, like wood bending under weight. Vale grabbed his lantern and followed the sound to the cellar. The door was ajar, damp air wafting up. He descended, finding a cavernous space, its walls lined with wine racks. At the far end, a loose stone in the wall caught his eye. He pried it free, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a single item, a gold pocket watch, engraved with J.C. Vale turned it over, his pulse quickening. The watch was stopped, its hands frozen at 11:43. A clue or a plant? He pocketed it, his mind racing. The Grange was a chessboard, and someone was moving pieces faster than he could follow. Part 4. The Weight of Secrets. The cellar's chill clung to Lawrence Vale as he climbed back to the main house, the gold pocket watch heavy in his pocket. Blackthorn Grange was alive with secrets, its walls whispering truths that someone was desperate to silence. The watch, engraved with J.C., was no coincidence. It tied to Carver, to Sir Reginald, to the notes and the locket. Vale's instincts told him the game was nearing its endgame, but the board was still murky, the player's motives obscured by lies and half-truths. He returned to the drawing room, where Clara sat alone, staring into the fire. The others had retired, or so Harrow claimed, though Vale trusted the butler's word about as far as he could throw him. Clara looked up as Vale entered, her face a mask of resolve. "Did you find something?" she asked. He showed her the watch, its gold case glinting in the firelight. "Found it in the cellar, hidden behind a stone. Ever seen it?" She shook her head. "No. But J.C. It's him, isn't it? Carver." "Likely," Vale said. "The question is why it's here, and who hid it." Clara's fingers tightened on her chair. "This house is suffocating me, Mr. Vale. I want to leave, but I can't, not until I know why this is happening." Vale nodded. Her courage was holding, but he saw the cracks. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we dig deeper. And Clara, lock your door." She left, and Vale settled by the fire, the watch in his hand. Its hands, frozen at 11:43, suggested a moment preserved, Carver's death, perhaps. He wound it, but it didn't tick. Broken, or deliberately stopped. He added it to his mental tally, the notes, the locket's receipt, Sir Reginald's journal, Quayle's letters, Lydia's photo, Marwood's map, the passage, the mirror's X, and now this. Each piece pointed to 1907, to a debt and a scandal that had never died. At dawn, Vale gathered the household in the dining room. The air was thick with distrust, their faces drawn from sleeplessness. Quayle's eyes were bloodshot, Lydia's hands trembled, Marwood's charm was fraying, and Harrow stood like a statue, his gaze fixed on some distant point. Vale held up the watch. "Found this last night," he said. "J.C. anyone want to tell me about it?" Quayle coughed, a nervous tick. "Could be anyone's. Old houses collect trinkets." "Not this one," Vale said. "It was hidden, and someone went to trouble to keep it that way. Same someone who's leaving notes and breaking mirrors." Lydia's voice was barely audible. "It's not me. I swear." Marwood leaned back, his eyes narrow. "You're fishing, Vale. Got a theory, or are you just stirring the pot?" "I've got enough," Vale said. "Carver was blackmailing Sir Reginald. Something big, big enough to ruin the family. Reginald didn't pay. Carver died. Now someone's dragging it up, and I'm betting they're in this room." The silence was electric. Quayle's face went gray. Lydia's breath caught. Marwood's fingers twitched, and Harrow's eyes flicked to Vale for the first time. Clara, at the table's head, looked from one to another, her expression unreadable. Vale pressed on. Quayle, you knew about Carver. Reginald wrote to you, begged for help. What was the secret? Quayle's voice cracked. I told you, I don't know. Reginald was frantic, said Carver had proof of something. Documents, maybe. I urged him to settle, but he wouldn't. Or couldn't, Vale said. Lydia, you've got a photo of Clara with a man you call Uncle J. Why keep it? Lydia shrank. It was just a picture. I didn't know him. My mother said he was a friend of the family. Friend, Vale repeated. Or the man who died because of your uncle? Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Vale turned to Marwood. Your map's got an X on the cliffs. Care to explain? Marwood's smile was gone. I told you, I was mapping the estate. That X marks an old boundary stone. Check it if you don't believe me. I will, Vale said. Harrow, you've been here longest. Carver was here in 1907. What happened to him? The butler's voice was flat. Mr. Carver visited often, sir. Then he stopped. I was told he passed away. Told by who? Vale asked. Sir Reginald, Harrow said, and his eyes went blank again. Vale let the room stew, then dismissed them. No one leaves the Grange. I'm checking that map, and then we're opening that locked door in the passage. He started with the cliffs, following Marwood's map. The path was treacherous, slick with mist and loose stones. The X marked a spot near the edge, where a weathered stone jutted from the earth. Vale knelt, brushing away dirt. The stone was carved with initials. J.C. below it, half buried, was a rusted tin. Inside was a single sheet of paper, brittle with age. It was a contract, dated 1907, between Sir Reginald and Carver, detailing a joint venture in a Cornish mine. The terms were brutal. Carver held the majority stake, with power to seize the Grange if Reginald defaulted. A handwritten note at the bottom read, "Burn this if I fall." Vale pocketed the contract, his mind racing. Carver's leverage wasn't just money, it was control. If he'd lived, the Grange would have been his. Sir Reginald's plan was starting to take shape. Back at the Grange, Vale rallied Clara and Harrow to tackle the passage's locked door. He'd found a ring of old keys in the cellar, and one fit the rusted lock. The door groaned open, revealing a stone chamber, its walls damp and moss-covered. In the center was a wooden chest, its lid carved with a crude axe. Vale pried it open, revealing a bundle of papers and a small, sealed vial of liquid, its label faded but legible, arsenic. The papers were letters, all in Carver's hand, addressed to Sir Reginald. They were demands, each more aggressive, threatening to expose the truth, unless paid. One letter, dated the day before the receipt, was explicit. I have the proof, Reginald. Your name, your daughter's future, it's mine to destroy. Meet me at the Grange, 11:30, or I go public. Vale checked the watch in his pocket. 11:43. Close enough to pin a moment. He handed the letters to Clara, keeping the vial hidden. Her face went white as she read. My father, he poisoned him? Looks that way, Vale said. But someone else knows, and they're using it to get to you. Harrow, silent until now, spoke. Sir Reginald was a good man, sir. He did what he had to. Vale's eyes narrowed. You knew? Harrow's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Vale locked the chest and sent Clara to her room, instructing Harrow to guard the passage. He needed time to think. The arsenic, the letters, the watch, they'd painted a picture of murder, carefully planned. But the notes, the locket, the mirror, they were theatrics, meant to scare Clara. Why not just demand the evidence? Unless the goal wasn't the papers, but something else. That afternoon, Vale confronted Quayle in the library. The doctor was half drunk, his hands shaking. You knew about the poison, Vale said, holding up the vial. Reginald told you. Quayle collapsed into a chair. I didn't know. He asked for arsenic, said it was for rats. After Carver died, I suspected. But I never asked. You kept his letters, Vale said. Why? To protect Clara, Quayle mumbled. If anyone found out. Vale left him, his disgust tempered by pity. Quayle was a coward, not a mastermind. Lydia was next, in the conservatory, her eyes red from crying. You knew Carver, Vale said, showing her the photo again. Uncle Jay, stop lying. She broke. He was my father, she whispered. My mother told me before she died. He wasn't married to her, but he sent money until he didn't. Vale leaned in. You think Reginald killed him? Lydia nodded, tears falling. I came here to find out. Clara doesn't know we're half-sisters. I didn't want to hurt her, but I needed the truth. Vale believed her. Lydia's pain was real, but her fear suggested she wasn't the one leaving notes. That left Marwood and Harrow. He found Marwood in the billiard room, his composure cracking. You're close to Clara, Vale said. Close enough to know her secrets. What's your game? Marwood lit a cigarette, his hand steady now. I'm her solicitor, Vale. I want what's best for her. This Carver business, it's a ghost. Let it lie. Ghosts don't break mirrors, Vale said. Or hide watches. Marwood exhaled smoke, saying nothing. Vale left, his suspicions hardening. Marwood was too calm, too invested. But Harrow's silence was louder. The butler knew the Grange's veins, its passages, its history. And he'd served Reginald through it all. That night Vale set a trap. He left the chest in the passage unlocked, the vial and letters inside, and waited in the shadows. Hours passed, the house creaking under the storm's weight. At 2 a.m., a figure slipped into the passage. Tall, silent, moving with purpose. Vale followed, his revolver ready. The figure reached the chest, opened it, and froze as Vale's lantern flared. It was Harrow, his face pale but resolute. Drop it, Vale said, nodding at the vial in the butler's hand. Harrow complied, his voice low. You don't understand, sir. This isn't what you think. Then explain, Vale said. And make it quick. Part 5. The Truth in the Shadows. Lawrence Vale stood in the damp stone chamber, his lantern casting Harrow's shadow across the mossy walls of Blackthorn Grange. The butler's face was a mask of resignation, the vial of arsenic at his feet, the open chest spilling its secrets, letters, threats, proof of a murder long buried. Vale's revolver was steady, but his mind raced. Harrow, the silent servant, had been the ghost in the walls, but the why of it was still a shadow. "Talk," Vale said, his voice low, cutting through the drip of water somewhere in the passage. "You wrote the notes. Moved the locket. Broke the mirror. Why?" Harrow's eyes met Vale's, steady despite the gun. "To protect Miss Clara, sir. Same as always. Protect her by scaring her half to death?" Vale's tone was dry, but his patience was thinning. "You've got 1 minute before I drag you upstairs and let the others pick you apart." Harrow's shoulders sagged, but his voice held firm. "It wasn't meant to go this far. I thought, if she left, she'd be safe. The Grange, it's cursed, sir. Ever since Sir Reginald and Carver." Vale lowered the lantern slightly, keeping Harrow in the light. "Carver's death. You knew?" Harrow nodded, a single, heavy motion. "I was there. Not in the room, but I saw enough. Carver came that night, March 1907. He and Sir Reginald argued in the library, shouting threats. Carver wanted the Grange, said he'd ruin the family if Reginald didn't pay." I heard glass break, then silence. Later, I saw Sir Reginald leave the library, his face like death. Carver was on the floor, clutching his chest. "Dead. Poison," Vale said, glancing at the vial. "I didn't know then," Harrow said. "Not for sure. Sir Reginald told me it was a heart attack, said to keep quiet for Miss Clara's sake. I believed him, wanted to believe him. He was a good man, sir, but cornered. Carver was a leech." Vale's eyes narrowed. "You hid the watch. The letters. Why?" "After Carver died, Sir Reginald gave me the watch, told me to bury it. Said it was evidence, though he didn't say of what. The letters I found later in his desk. I kept them, thinking they'd protect the family if anyone came asking. The Grange was all Miss Clara had left." "And the notes?" Vale pressed. "The locket? The mirror?" Harrow's voice tightened. "When Miss Clara came back, I thought the past was dead. But then Mr. Marwood started asking questions. About the estate, the debts, Carver. He was too curious, sir, digging where he shouldn't. I overheard him talking to Dr. Quayle, saying there was money still owed, that Carver's heirs might come for it. I couldn't let that happen." "So you played ghost," Vale said. "To scare Clara away." Harrow looked away, shame flickering in his eyes. "I thought if she left, the Grange would stay quiet. The locket, I knew it held the receipt, but not how to open it. I moved it to her pillow, hoping she'd find it and leave. The notes were to push her. The mirror. I got careless. I'd seen the X on the frame, thought it meant something, but when I checked, I broke the glass. I scratched Carver's name to make her think it was a warning from outside." Vale's jaw tightened. Harrow's story fit, too well, almost. The butler's loyalty to Clara was clear, but his methods were desperate, sloppy for a man who'd kept secrets for 20 years. "Marwood," Vale said. What's he after? Harrow's face hardened. He's no solicitor, sir. Not just that. He's got papers, letters, old ones, from Carver's estate. He showed them to Quayle, said they proved the Grange was rightfully Carver's. I think he's here to claim it, or sell the claim to someone who will. Vale's mind clicked. Marwood's map, his charm, his interest in Clara. It wasn't just greed. He was working an angle, maybe for himself, maybe for someone else. And Quayle? Lydia? Quayle's a fool, Harrow said. He suspects what happened but won't admit it, even to himself. Miss Lydia, she's scared, sir. She knows something, but I don't know what. Vale stepped closer, his voice low. You're holding something back. The passage, those footprints weren't all yours. Someone else was in here. Harrow hesitated, then nodded. Last night, before Miss Lydia screamed, I saw someone in the passage, tall, quick. I didn't see their face. I thought it was Marwood, but I couldn't be sure. Vale holstered his revolver, satisfied Harrow wasn't a flight risk. You're done playing ghost. Stay in your quarters until I say otherwise. One wrong move, and I call the police. Harrow nodded, his face etched with defeat. Vale locked the chest and escorted the butler upstairs, locking him in his room. The house was quiet, the storm outside a low growl. Vale returned to the drawing room, spreading the evidence on the table. The notes, the locket's receipt, the journal, Quayle's letters, Lydia's photo, Marwood's map, the watch, the contract, the arsenic, Carver's letters. The puzzle was nearly complete, but one piece was missing, the motive behind Marwood's game. He summoned Clara first, showing her the vial and letters. Her face crumpled as she read Carver's threats. My father killed him, she whispered. And Harrow knew. Harrow was protecting you, Vale said. Misguided but loyal. The question is Marwood. He's after something. Maybe the Grange, maybe more. You trust him? Clara's eyes darkened. He's been kind, but too kind. He's always watching, always there. I thought it was concern, but now, keep him at arm's length, Vale said. I'm not done with him. Next, Vale tackled Quayle, dragging the doctor to the library. Quayle was sober now, but his hands shook. Marwood showed you papers, Vale said. Carver's claim. What did he want? Quayle's voice was hoarse. He said Carver's son. His bastard, from some woman in Devon, had rights to the Grange. Marwood claimed he was representing him, wanted to settle quietly. I told him to leave it alone, but he wouldn't. Carver's son, Vale repeated. Lydia's words echoed. He was my father. Did Marwood mention a name? No, Quayle said. Just that the son was young, ambitious. Marwood said he'd pay me to keep quiet, but I refused. Vale let Quayle go, his suspicions shifting. Lydia was Carver's daughter, not a son. Was Marwood lying, or was there another heir? He found Lydia in her room, the photo of Uncle J on her bedside table. You said Carver was your father, Vale said. Any brothers? Her eyes widened. No. Just me. My mother said I was his only child. Then who's Marwood's client? Vale asked. Lydia shook her head, terrified. I don't know. He asked me about Carver, said he was researching the estate. I didn't tell him anything. Vale believed her. Lydia was a pawn, caught in a game she barely understood. That left Marwood. Vale found him in the billiard room, polishing a cue with deliberate calm. You're representing Carver's son, Vale said. Except there is no son. Lydia's his only child. So what's your play? Marwood's smile was ice. You're reaching, Vale. I'm here to settle the estate, nothing more. Carver's claim is old news, nobody's collecting. Then why the map? Vale said, tossing it on the table. Why the X on the cliffs? You're hunting something. Marwood's eyes flickered, just for a moment. You're clever, Vale. Too clever. But you're chasing shadows. Vale left, his gut telling him Marwood was the key. The solicitor's charm was a mask, and behind it was a plan, maybe to seize the Grange, maybe to blackmail Clara with Carver's proof. But the notes, the locket, the mirror, those were Harrow's doing. So why was Marwood in the passage? What had he seen or taken? That afternoon, Vale returned to the cliffs, checking the stone with the X. The tin was still there, the contract inside, but something felt off. The dirt around the stone was disturbed, as if someone had been back. Vale scanned the cliffs, finding a narrow path leading to a cave below. Inside, hidden behind a boulder, was a leather satchel. It held a single item, a ledger, marked Carver and Winthrop, 1907. Its pages detailed the mine venture, with a final entry. Reginald refuses to honor the split. I'll take the Grange if I must. Proof is safe. Vale's pulse quickened. The proof was the contract, or something more. Marwood had been here, or someone had. The ledger was too clean, too perfectly placed. A plan, maybe, to throw him off. He took it back to the Grange, locking it in his room. That night Vale set another trap. He left a note in Clara's room, written in his own hand to mimic the others. The truth is in the cave. Come alone, midnight. He hid in her wardrobe, waiting. At 11:55, the door creaked open. A figure slipped in, tall, silent, and took the note. Vale stepped out, lantern raised. It was Marwood, his face pale, the note crumpled in his hand. Clever Vale, he said, his voice low. But you're too late. Late for what? Vale asked, his revolver drawn. Marwood's smile was grim. The truth. It's bigger than you think. Before Vale could press, a scream echoed from downstairs. Marwood bolted, and Vale followed, the house erupting into chaos. Part 6. The Final Reckoning. The screen tore through Blackthorn Grange, sharp and raw, pulling Lawrence Vale from the shadowed doorway of Clara's room. Marwood was already halfway down the corridor, his footsteps pounding against the ancient floorboards. Vale followed, revolver in hand, the weight of the mystery pressing against him like the storm outside. The scream had come from the drawing-room, and as Vale descended the grand staircase, the pieces of the puzzle, notes, locket, watch, ledger, arsenic, clicked into a pattern, not yet complete but close. Marwood's grim words, the truth is bigger than you think, echoed in his mind. The solicitor was no bystander, and this chaos was his doing, or his undoing. The drawing room was a tableau of panic. Clara stood by the fireplace, her face ashen, a letter clutched in her hand. Lydia knelt on the floor, sobbing, her hands covering her face. Quayle hovered near the sofa, his spectacles askew, muttering incoherently. Harrow, released from his quarters by some unseen hand, stood in the doorway, his eyes wide with something that wasn't fear but resolve. Marwood skidded to a halt beside Vale, his composure shattered, and for the first time, Vale saw sweat on the man's brow. "What happened?" Vale demanded, his voice cutting through the din. Clara's hand trembled as she held out the letter. "This was on the table when I came down. It's from my father." Vale took it, his eyes scanning the faded ink. The handwriting was Sir Reginald's, unmistakable from the journal. "Clara, if you read this, I am gone. Forgive me. Carver was a poison, and I did what I must to save you. The truth is in the Grange, hidden where only you can find it. Burn it, or it will destroy you. No date, no signature, just those words, heavy with guilt." "Where was it?" Vale asked, his gaze sweeping the room. "On the table," Clara said. "I couldn't sleep, came down for a book. It was just there." Vale's eyes flicked to Marwood, who was edging toward the door. "Stay put," he snapped, then turned to Lydia. "You screamed. Why?" Lydia's voice was choked. "I saw him, Carver. In the window. His face staring." Vale glanced at the rain-streaked glass. "Nothing but darkness beyond." "You're seeing ghosts," he said, but his tone was sharp. "Or someone wants you to." He rounded on Quayle. "You. This letter, did you know about it?" Quayle shook his head, his face gray. "No. Reginald never mentioned." "I swear, Vale, I didn't know." Harrow stepped forward, his voice low. "It's true, sir. That letter, I hid it, years ago, in Sir Reginald's study. Someone must have found it." Vale's jaw tightened. The study had been searched, but not thoroughly. Someone had been busy, and Marwood's sudden nerve suggested he knew more than he'd let on. "Nobody moves," Vale said. "We're ending this now." He spread the evidence on the table. The notes, the locket's receipt, the journal, Quayle's letters, Lydia's photo, Marwood's map, the watch, the contract, the arsenic, Carver's letters, the ledger from the cave. The letter from Sir Reginald joined them, its words a confession and a plea. Vale stood back, letting the group see it all, watching their faces. Clara's was grief-stricken, Lydia's terrified, Quayle's defeated, Harrow's stoic. Marwood's was unreadable, but his hands were clenched, knuckles white. "Here's how it plays," Vale said, his voice cold and precise, like a blade. "Sir Reginald killed Carver in 1907. Poison, likely arsenic, in the library at 11:30. Carver was blackmailing him, threatening to ruin the family with proof of a deal gone sour, a mine venture that gave Carver claim to the Grange. Reginald hid the evidence, the watch, the letters, the contract. He died, and the secret stayed buried. Until Clara came back." He pointed to the notes. "Harrow wrote these, moved the locket, broke the mirror. He wanted Clara gone, thought it'd keep the past buried. Loyal, but stupid. The passage, the footprints, that was you, Harrow, mostly. But not always. Harrow nodded, his face etched with shame. Vale's eyes moved to Marwood. You're the wild card. You're not just a solicitor. You've got papers, Carver's papers, and you're chasing something. Money, the Grange, or both. You were in the passage in the cave. You knew about the ledger. What's your game? Marwood's smile was gone, replaced by a snarl. You're good, Vale, but you're blind. I'm not after the Grange. I'm after justice. Justice? Vale's brow arched. For who? For me, Marwood said, his voice low, venomous. I'm Carver's son. Not Lydia, she's my half-sister, though she doesn't know it. My mother was Carver's mistress, cast off when he got greedy. He left me nothing but his name and his proof. I came here to take what's mine. Clara gasped, her hand to her mouth. Lydia stared, her tears drying. Quayle muttered something incoherent. Harrow's eyes narrowed, but he stayed silent. Vale didn't blink. You wrote the letter? No, Marwood said. That's Reginald's, all right. I found it in the study, left it for Clara to find. I wanted her to know what her father did. The notes, though, that wasn't me. Harrow's the fool there. Vale's mind raced. Marwood's story fit too well, like the ledger in the cave. You planted the ledger, he said. To push me toward Carver's claim. Marwood shrugged. You're the detective. I needed you to see the truth, but not too fast. The Grange is mine by right, Carver's contract proves it. I was going to buy Clara out, fair and square, but she wouldn't listen. So you scared her, Vale said. Used Harrow's tricks to your advantage. I didn't need to, Marwood said. Harrow was doing fine on his own. Vale turned to Clara. The truth your father mentioned, it's the contract, or something more. He said it's hidden where only you can find it. Any ideas? Clara's eyes were distant, searching memory. The locket, she said suddenly. It's always been the locket. My mother gave it to me before she died, said it was my legacy. I thought it was just a receipt, but Vale handed her the locket from the table. She opened it, pressed the hidden catch again. This time, a second panel slid free, revealing a tiny key, no bigger than a child's finger. Clara stared. I never knew. Any locks you recognize? Vale asked. She hesitated, then nodded. There's a box in the attic. My father's. I tried to open it as a child, but it wouldn't budge. Vale didn't wait. He led the group to the attic, a dusty warren of trunks and cobwebs. Clara pointed to a small, iron-bound box in the corner, its lock rusted but intact. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a single document, folded and sealed with wax. Vale broke the seal, reading aloud. To whom it may concern, I, Reginald Winthrop, confess to the murder of James Carver, March 12, 1907. He threatened my family's honor with lies of a debt I never owed. I poisoned him to protect my daughter. The contract he held was forged, his claim false. Burn this, Clara, and let the Grange be yours. The room was silent, the weight of the confession crushing. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Lydia whispered, He wasn't lying. Marwood lunged for the document, But Vale was faster, his revolver up. Enough, he said. You're done, Marwood. The contract's a fake, your claim's dust. Carver was a crook, and you're no better. Marwood's face twisted. You can't prove that. I don't need to, Vale said. Clara's got the Grange, and you've got nothing but a story. Try taking it to court. I'll be there with this. He held up the confession. Marwood deflated, his fight gone. Quayle sank onto a trunk, muttering about ruin. Lydia reached for Clara's hand, her voice soft. I didn't know about us. Clara nodded, her grief raw but steady. We'll talk, Lydia. Later. Vale turned to Harrow. You're lucky I don't call the police. But you'll answer to Clara, not me. Harrow bowed his head. Yes, sir. The storm broke as dawn crept over the cliffs, the Grange quiet at last. Vale packed his bag, the evidence box for Clara to decide its fate. Marwood was sent packing, his threats empty. Quayle promised to stay, to help Clara and Lydia navigate their new truth. Harrow resumed his duties, his loyalty unshaken but humbled. Clara met Vale at the gates, the sea wind tugging at her hair. Thank you, Mr. Vale. I thought I'd lose everything. You almost did, Vale said, his tone dry but kind. Burn that confession, Clara. Let the past stay dead. She nodded, clutching the locket. Vale tipped his hat and walked down the cliff path, the Grange's shadow fading behind him. The mystery was solved, the truth laid bare, but as always, it left a bitter taste. Men like Carver and Marwood never stopped, and houses like the Grange never forgot. Vale lit a cigarette, the smoke curling into the mist, and kept walking. Thank you for listening to The Shadow of Blackthorn Grange. If you enjoyed this tale of mystery and intrigue, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Porchlight Tales for more gripping stories. Your support keeps the lantern burning.